because you know it's necessary. But understand that endurance is required. Don't let dead weight slow you down. Because dead weight is exactly that.
Get big up.
It has no life, but you have life. And you must continue to push and run as fast as you can. And if you feel that you're getting a little tired,
T6,
if you feel that you don't have enough left in you, I suggest you push that next button. I suggest you go into that second and third gear.
I'm here.
I suggest that you understand that you got to be the one to make it to the finish line. And even when you cross the finish line, prepare yourself for the next race of your life. Because every day you're racing. Run fast. Run strong. Run with power. Run with greatness. Run with a full heart. And believe in it. But don't quit. Understand why you're running. If you ever question why you run, believe and know there's a purpose behind everything that you do. It is time to run for your life. Pushing with everything you have inside of you.
Hello, chat.
Running towards an opportunity. Running towards a victory.
Pull.
Running as hard as you can.
Give me 10.
You got to understand why you're running. You have to understand the significance and why you're running. Don't run away from the challenges. Don't run away because it's not going the way you want it to go. Run. Run with a full heart. Run with everything you have in your heart. Get your legs moving and run. Sometimes you may ask yourself, how fast can I run? How fast can I get to my destination? But you have to also understand, when you're running, you got to have in your mind that you got to pace yourself.
Shit.
You got to be able to pay attention when you're running. Because while you're running, there are going to be obstacles around you. And these obstacles are going to be put in place that may try to distract you. But you got to keep running. And some days you're going to be slow, and some days you just got to be fast. But make sure when you're running, you got that mindset in the right place. Don't be reckless. Be productive in it. And understand that it means something. Recognize your beliefs. Recognize your drive. Don't concern yourself with things that doesn't concern your best. Because if you're not giving your best, then the rest will catch up to you. So stay ahead of the pack and don't slack, because it will only push you back. Continue the journey and keep your eyes on the prize. Your rewards are waiting for you. You don't want to be the first on the track. But you got to be the one that's thinking. But don't take too much time thinking too much. gotta walk a little bit first. You got to walk a little bit so you can understand what's about to happen to you. You got to walk a little bit so when it's time to put the pedal to the metal, you got your head up and you thriving and you strike and you moving so fast that nothing around you can stop you. So don't be late for the celebration of your victory, because your victory belongs to you, no one else. Take pride in it, believe in it, stand on it, earn it, because it's yours. Keep it moving, be productive, be powerful,
And from the bottom of my heart, conduct
run hard,
your
and conduct
business.
your business.
Whoa. Rup. That's a lot of pull-ups already. Wow. That's not the one. This sounds good, actually.
I could say that I was abandoned by my father. Could say I was exhausted from job.
My dear friend, you didn't land on this message by coincidence. This is not just another scroll, not just another video in your feed. You were chosen to see this, chosen to hear these words. This moment was divinely scheduled, not randomly stumbled upon. You've been praying, asking, crying out for something real, something true. And now God is answering, not in a way that shouts, but in a way that speaks straight to your spirit. If you're watching this right now, it's because heaven saw something in you that couldn't be ignored. You are not here by chance. You are here by calling. There's purpose in your presence right now. You ever prayed for something and when the answer came, you didn't even recognize it? I'm not talking about obvious blessings, the kind that come wrapped in clarity and peace. I'm talking about the ones that show up wrapped in struggle, delivered through discomfort, hidden inside something you almost walked past. Sometimes the blessing doesn't look like the prayer. It doesn't sound like the promise. And if you're not looking through the eyes of faith, you'll miss it. You'll step right over what you were meant to receive. That's what this message is about. It's about recognizing God's answer even when it doesn't look the way you expected. Because God doesn't always send finished products. He often sends potential. He sends ingredients, not bread. And he watches to see if you trust him enough to prepare.
Yeah, we're here.
So if you've been walking in the wilderness, if you've been waiting on a breakthrough, wondering where God is, this word is for you. He's not late. He's not distant. He's speaking. He's answering. The question is, can you recognize his voice when it doesn't match your vision? Keep watching. You're about to find out. Before we go any deeper, I want to welcome you to the channel. And
Aye.
I need you to do 3 things right now. First, like this video. Second,
Yeah.
subscribe button. We are building something powerful.
Oh.
A family of 30,000 strong, walking in faith, fighting through doubt, and rising together. Third, drop 77 in the comments below. That number isn't random. It's heaven's number of completion, perfection, and divine alignment. It's a declaration that you believe God is putting the pieces of your life into place, not by chance, but by calling. If something in you knows this message is speaking directly to your season, declare it. If you
I declare
believe this is your awakening moment, don't hold back. Say it in the comments, say it with your life. And if you are one of the chosen, you won't click away. Because deep down, you already know this word was meant for you. Now let's go. Let's step into it. The chosen ones, let's begin. You're in the region. Don't quit now. Beloved chosen ones, to begin today's message, let me take you back to the book of Exodus with the people of Israel. We all know that the Israelites came out of Egypt as slaves, tired, worn, beaten down. But the moment they stepped through the Red Sea, something changed. Something shifted in the atmosphere. They went in as slaves, but they came out as sons and daughters of the Most High. That transformation didn't happen when they packed up their bag. It didn't happen when Pharaoh said, go.
Come on now.
In the water, in the crossing, in the place where they were most afraid. That's where God changed their identity. And I'm telling somebody right now, you may feel like a slave to your past, a prisoner to your pain, but when you step through what's been trying to drown you, you're going to come out different. Because the very thing chasing you, that fear, that shame, that guilt, that addiction, God is around it. That Pharaoh behind you won't make it through the water. God is not just bringing you out. He's wiping out everything that ever tried to drag you back. But I need you to understand something important. Every new beginning has a messy middle. There's a space between slavery and the promise. A space where you're not where you used to be, but you're not yet where you're going. That space is called transition. And transition will test everything in you. It will stretch your faith. It will shake your perspective. It will expose what's still wounded, still hungry, still unsure. That's where Israel was. Free, but frustrated. Delivered, but uncomfortable. Here's the hard truth. The same people who cried out to God for freedom, begged for deliverance, are now the same people complaining. 2.5 months into the journey, and they're ready to go back. They tell Moses, why did you bring us out here to die? They start longing for Egypt, talking about pots of meat and full bellies. Ain't it crazy how we can forget the pain of our past just because the present feels uncertain? But don't judge them too quickly. We've all been there. We've all prayed for change, then got uncomfortable when the change came. We've all asked God to move and then questioned the path he took. We've also been with Israel. It's a warning. It's a reminder when we let faith and not by sight. But this moment with Israel, it's a warning. It's a reminder when we let faith rewrite the past and bitterness distort our memory. They remembered the food of Egypt, but forgot the chains. They remembered the flavor, but forgot the oppression. And that right there, that's what happens when gratitude fades. You start romanticizing your bondage. You start looking back at broken places like they were safe. But let me tell you something. God didn't bring you out to let you die in the desert. He brought you out to bring you in. But you've got to make peace with not knowing all the details. See, that's what makes the desert so difficult. Not the heat, not the terrain. It's the uncertainty. It's the not knowing how long. Not knowing what's next. And that's where many of us are. You're walking through something, but you don't know how far you are from the breakthrough. And that not knowing is messing with your mind. It's clouding your vision. It's making you question everything, yourself, your calling, even God. But hear me, uncertainty does not mean absence. Just because God hasn't revealed the destination doesn't mean he's not guiding you. Sometimes he leads you with a cloud by day and fire by night, but he doesn't give you the map. Why? Because he's not just trying to get you somewhere, he's trying to grow you into someone. You're not just traveling to a promised land, you're becoming the person who can carry the promise. And that's why the transition hurts. That's why it's heavy. That's why you feel misunderstood, attacked, burdened by people who were supposed to walk with you. Just like Moses. He was trying to help, but they turned on him. Misplaced rage. You ever been there? You try to help someone and they lash out. Not because of what you did, but because of what they've been carrying for years. That's what Moses dealt with. People angry at him, but really angry at their fear. Now listen to this. God tells Moses, I'm going to send bread from heaven. That's the miracle. That's the provision. That's the answer. But here's where it gets deep. When the bread fell, it didn't look like what they expected. They called it manna, which literally means, what is it? They were staring at the blessing, but because it didn't match their imagination, they questioned it. And that's the message today. That's the word somebody needs to hear. Sometimes the answer you prayed for won't look like the prayer you prayed. Sometimes the way God delivers won't line up with the way you pictured it. You asked for bread and he gave you manna. Same blessing, different form. Manna didn't fall as loaves. It didn't come baked and buttered. It came as raw material. It had to be gathered, prepared, cooked. God gave them provision, but left room for participation. And that's how he still works. God sends potential, not finished products. He gives you the job interview, not the career. He gives you the opportunity, not the empire. He gives you the date, not the marriage, because he's not just trying to provide, he's trying to partner. Some of us are missing our miracles because we're stepping over manna waiting on loaves. We don't recognize the answer because it doesn't match the vision in our heads. We want God to drop it done and perfect, but God says, I'll drop the ingredients, you prepare the blessing. You've got to gather, you've got to work it, you've got to trust that what's in front of you is divine, even if it looks unfamiliar. They were in the wilderness, surrounded by uncertainty, but God was feeding them daily, every morning, new mercy, new provision. But the blessing only lasted for the day. If they tried to store it up, it would rot. Why? Because God was teaching them to depend on him daily, teaching them that his word is enough for today, that they don't need to see next week to trust him right now. And that's what I want you to hear. You may not recognize the form, but you've got to trust the source. You've got to believe that what God gave you is enough, that it's holy even if it looks humble, that it's from heaven even if it feels unfamiliar. So let me ask you, what are you stepping over because it doesn't look like what you imagined? What have you called nothing that's actually your answer in disguise? Who have you dismissed because they didn't come in the package you expected? Maybe the blessing is already in your hands, but you don't recognize it yet. Maybe the job, the idea, the relationship, the opportunity, it's already in front of you, but because it's raw, because it's different, you've been saying, what is this? It's manna, it's what God sent. And if you prepare it, if you trust him with it, it will become bread. But if you wait for it to become bread before you believe, you'll never move. You'll stay hungry in the middle of abundance. Now let me tell you why this is critical. Because when Jesus came, he was the true bread from heaven. And just like with manna, people didn't recognize him. He came to his own, and his own received him not. Because he didn't come wrapped in royalty. He didn't look like the king they expected. So they said, "What is this?" And they missed the Savior standing in front of them. We do the same thing today. We miss the move of God because we're looking through the wrong lens. We're waiting on a form instead of trusting the source. But if you can shift your perspective, if you can surrender your thoughts, God will open your eyes. His thoughts are not your thoughts. His ways are not your ways. So if you're going to follow him, you've got to forsake what you thought it would look like. You've got to lay down your expectations and say, "Lord, I trust you. I trust what you've placed in front of me, even if I don't understand it." You don't need all the answers to walk in obedience. You don't need full clarity to trust completely. All you need is faith. Because faith doesn't recognize based on appearance. It recognizes based on spirit. That's why the disciples didn't recognize Jesus walking on water. The form was different, but when he spoke, they knew the voice. That's how you'll know too, not by sight, but by sound, not by the way it looks, but by the way it moves your spirit. So if the blessing doesn't look like the prayer, don't panic, don't walk away, prepare it, gather it, work it, trust it, because God has already answered. Now it's your move. You've been chosen for this moment. You've been trusted with the unfamiliar. You've been called to recognize the divine in disguise. Don't step over manna looking for bread. Don't reject the answer because it came wrapped in work. God is doing something new, and it's in your reach. But it won't come finished. It'll come full of potential. You've got to be willing to see it, to trust it, and to move with it. So lift your head, open your heart, and take a fresh look at what's in front of you. Because what you've been waiting on might already be here. You just didn't recognize it. But now, my dear friend, but let's be real for a minute. One of the hardest places for any human being to stand is in uncertainty. You don't need track how long, not knowing what's next, not knowing if what you're doing is even working. That kind of uncertainty can wear you down. For the Israelites, it did. 2.5 months out of Egypt, walking through a dry, unfamiliar land, carrying their past on their backs and their future out of sight. And it was in that place, in between what they'd left and where they were headed, that the weight of not knowing began to crack their confidence. Uncertainty has a way of shouting louder than faith, especially when your soul is weary. It creeps in, shakes your confidence, disrupts your peace, and makes you forget just how far God has already brought you. And if you're not vigilant, it'll twist your memory. It'll start telling you that the chains you were once desperate to escape were somehow safer than the freedom you prayed for, just because they were familiar. That's exactly what happened to the people of Israel. They started looking back at Egypt not as the place of their suffering, but as the place where things were predictable. At least we had food, they said. At least we knew what was coming. They weren't remembering their pain, they were romanticizing it. They confused captivity with comfort and began resenting the very path that God was using to lead them into promise and purpose. And that's what I need you to understand. Freedom always comes with a cost. It's not just about breaking away from what held you back. It's about stepping into what lies ahead, even when the path isn't clear. Freedom demands that you move forward without all the answers. That's what faith really is. Trusting God when the full picture hasn't been revealed. And God, in his wisdom, knew this. That's why he didn't give Israel a blueprint of every step. He didn't hand them a timeline. He didn't say in 13 days you'll arrive at the promised land. He said, follow me. A cloud to guide them by day, a fire to lead them by night. Just enough light to take the next step, not enough to control the journey. He keeps just enough hidden so you stay close. So you stay close. So you listen. So you lean in. Because if you saw everything, you trust the plan, not the one who made it. So when Israel starts to panic, it wasn't because God had abandoned them. It was because their fear became louder than their memory. They forgot how God split the Red Sea.
Wow.
They forgot how he brought down plague after plague to deliver them. They forgot the pillar of cloud that led them by day and the fire by night. They forgot the miraculous hand that brought them out of Egypt. And when you forget what God has already done, you begin to question what he's doing now. That's the danger of uncertainty. It doesn't just cloud your thinking, it poisons your spirit. It turns gratitude into grumbling. It turns worship into worry. It takes people who were once free and makes them long for bondage just because it felt familiar. It makes sons act like slaves. And Moses, he's in the middle of it all. He didn't volunteer for this role out of ambition.
Hi, Pop.
He answered a call. He said yes to God. And now he's bearing the frustration of a people who don't understand the process. They're lashing out, projecting their pain onto him. He's standing in obedience, yet surrounded by opposition. Not because he failed, but because they were afraid, because they were hurting, because they forgot who brought them out. Now let me tell you something as a leader. This is where the weight really presses.
Yup.
Leadership isn't just about carrying a title or casting a vision. It's about carrying the burdens nobody sees. It's about standing strong when the pressure rises and staying faithful when people turn on you. Because real leadership doesn't just involve responsibility, it demands resilience. If you're truly walking in your calling, you won't only carry the vision God gave you, you will also carry criticism, confusion, and conflict. You'll be misunderstood. You'll be misjudged. Just like Moses, you'll be attacked by the very people you're sacrificing everything to lead. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're serving, loving, giving all you've got, and still getting backlash. Not because you messed up, but because you're accessible. That's where misplaced rage shows up. It's when someone's unhealed trauma finds a new target. When people can't name their fear, they name you instead. It's when your spouse gets the anger meant for your childhood. When your coworker gets the frustration meant for your own regrets. When Moses hears complaints, but the truth is, they're afraid, tired, and uncertain about how long the wilderness will last. And you're the one standing in front. So they direct it at you. That's a silent battle leaders fight. And I've got to pause here and speak directly to those of you who've been the target of someone else's pain. To every person who's been hit with words that weren't really meant for them, who's been on the receiving end of anger that came from wounds you didn't cause, I see you. God sees you. You're not losing your mind. You're not too sensitive. You're not weak. You're standing in the line of fire, not because someone else hasn't healed. And the more your heart is open, the more deeply it cuts. Moses was leading people, yes, but he was also absorbing trauma. Trauma he didn't create, pain he didn't inflict. While they were building bricks under Pharaoh's whip, Moses was being raised in the palace, groomed for influence. He didn't suffer the way they did. So now he's not only tasked with leading them, he's carrying pain that isn't his, trying to navigate emotions he's never personally known. That's another layer of the burden, leading people who don't fully trust you because you don't share their past. Moses belonged to them by birth, but felt like an outsider by experience. And still, he stayed. Still, he led. That's the weight of purpose. And that's why some of you feel so isolated, because you're called to lead people who don't fully understand you. You're trying to help people who keep doubting your motives. You're loving people who think you're their enemy, but don't give up. Don't let the misplaced rage make you question your assignment. Moses wanted to quit, but God didn't call him based on comfort. He called him based on capacity. And let me tell you something. Capacity is not discovered in comfort. It's proven in pressure. You don't know the strength of a vessel until it's filled to the brim and shaken.
Fuck.
You don't know how much oil is inside until the press begins. You don't know what you're truly made of until life puts weight on your shoulders you never asked for, and still you have to show up. Still you have to lead. Still you have to pour out when you yourself are running dry. Moses understood that. He kept showing up, kept leading, kept interceding, even when the people grumbled, even when they turned their backs on him, even when they forgot the very prayers they once cried out for deliverance. He kept going. That's what leadership looks like in the wilderness. Because here's the contradiction of transition. People beg for deliverance, but complain when it arrives in the form of discipline. They cry out for change, but get angry when the change requires work. And if you're not deeply anchored in your calling, you'll let their noise shake your purpose. You'll start believing their doubts. But it doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're in the thick of transformation, and transformation is never comfortable. Now, here's what I need you to catch. Just because you're facing blame, criticism, or resistance does not mean you're off course. In fact, more often than not, that pressure is a sign that you're right where you're supposed to be. Sometimes the presence of opposition is the very confirmation you've been praying for. People don't get uncomfortable when you're stuck. They get stirred when you start stepping into purpose. When you begin to break the chains they've grown used to. When you start walking in a direction they're too afraid to travel. That's when the noise gets loud. That's when the darts start flying. That's exactly where Moses found himself. Leading through resistance. Navigating a people who were confused, scared, and lashing out. And in the middle of their complaining, their doubting, their desperation, God still showed up. But not in the way they expected. He didn't rain down bread shaped like what they knew. He gave them manna. A provision they had no context for. A miracle they didn't even recognize. And that's where many of us miss it. Because when God provides something unfamiliar, something outside of our limited frame of reference, we dismiss it. We look at it and say, what is this? We doubt it. Not because it isn't real, but because it isn't familiar. That's what uncertainty does. It clouds our spiritual discernment. It numbs our sensitivity to the supernatural. It causes us to walk right past the very thing God sent to bless us, because it doesn't look the way we thought it would, and that's the trap. That's how the enemy wins, by making you so fixated on your expectation that you miss God's revelation. But I came to tell you, don't let uncertainty steal your obedience. Don't let misplaced rage distract you from your calling. Don't let the pressure of leading wounded people make you forget that God chose you for this. You were built for this wilderness. You were chosen to walk this path, not because you're perfect, but because you're willing. And God is not just going to lead you, He's going to feed you. He's going to sustain you, but it might not look like what you expected. The answer may come as manna, and you've got to have the faith to say, even though I don't recognize it, I'll receive it. You've got to be able to say, Lord, I trust you even when I don't understand you. Because the promise is still real, the purpose is still alive, and the provision is still falling. Even in the desert, even in the doubt, even in the middle of people who don't appreciate you. God is still speaking, God is still sending, but you've got to stay open. So if you're leading and hurting, if you're walking but unsure, if you're pouring but empty, I want to remind you of something powerful. God never asked you to be perfect. He just asked you to keep walking, keep trusting, keep preparing the manna, keep carrying the vision. And even when you face misplaced rage, even when the people you love turn on you, even when the weight feels unfair, know this: you are not alone. Moses wasn't alone. You're not alone. God is in the wilderness with you, in the uncertainty with you, in the battle with you. And he's not done. He's not finished writing your story. And the people you're leading, they may not see it now. They may not understand it now. But one day, they'll look back and say, thank God for Moses. One day, they'll see what you carried. One day, they'll recognize what you helped them survive. So hold your head up. Keep walking. Keep trusting. Because even when you don't know how far the promise is, the one who made the promise is still faithful, and he's walking with you. Every step, every tear, every burden, you are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are chosen. And if you're in the region, don't quit now. You're closer than you think. Beloved chosen ones, you ever had a picture in your mind of how something was supposed to go? You prayed, you believed, you even fasted, and then when the answer came, it looked nothing like what you imagined. You said, Lord, that can't be it. That doesn't look like the breakthrough I was waiting for. That doesn't feel like the blessing I asked for. But hear me tonight, that's the moment when real faith gets tested. Because sometimes what you prayed for comes wrapped in a package you don't recognize. See, we live in a world shaped by expectations. We build mental images of how things should unfold, how the job will be the perfect fit, how the spouse will behave with flawless grace, how the healing will feel instant and complete. We design these blueprints in our minds and we cling to them tightly. But then when God answers, and the answer looks different from what we imagined, we get confused. We question the provision. We hesitate to receive the blessing, not because God didn't respond, but because his response didn't match the script we wrote in our imagination. But God already warned us through his word. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. That's not just a poetic verse to comfort us. It's a declaration of divine difference. It's God telling us that the way heaven operates is on a completely different plane. He sees the whole picture while we're only holding a piece. His timing is perfect. His strategy is eternal. But if we try to weigh his ways on our human scale, we'll misread the miracle. We'll overlook the breakthrough. I've come to understand that one of the biggest reasons we miss God's provision is because we're still comparing it to the picture we had in our head. We're not tuned to his voice. We're fixated on our version. That's why Israel said, what is this? When the manna fell, God called it bread from heaven, but they called it, what is it? Because it didn't resemble what they remembered. Their minds were still stuck on the bread of bondage. So when freedom came in a new form, they couldn't receive it. And that's the danger of expectation. It can blind you to revelation. Question is, how many times have we done the same? God sent provision, but we didn't like the way it came. God opened the door, but it wasn't the door we wanted. God moved us forward, but it wasn't the route we planned. And so we called it confusion, when really it was just divine contradiction. A moment where heaven invaded your life, but didn't ask for your permission or match your project. Let me tell you something that set me free. Just because it doesn't look like your expectation doesn't mean it's not your answer. Just because it doesn't feel like your plan doesn't mean it's not his purpose. There are moments in life where you have to surrender your thoughts, not just your sin, not just your struggles, but your expectations. That's what real surrender looks like. Surrender isn't just about saying, God, I give you my pain. Sometimes it's about saying, God, I give you my picture. I give you the version of success I had in my mind. I give you the relationship I thought I needed. I give you the timeline I was holding on to.
I give you
the job I thought I deserved. I give you the dream that I painted in my mind. And I say, not my will, but yours be done.
Yours be
You know, sometimes we're not struggling because God didn't show up. We're struggling because he showed up different. And in our pride, we can't receive what we don't recognize. But if you want to walk with God, you've got to be willing to throw out the blueprint. You've got to be willing to erase the mental image. Because his ways are higher, his thoughts are greater, and his answers are always, always better than your imagination. Now, I know it's hard. It's hard to let go of what you had in mind. It's hard to release the version of life you were committed to, especially when that version gave you comfort and it gave you identity. But growth requires letting go. Transformation requires transition. And God can't pour new wine into old wineskins. He can't birth a new season while you're still holding on to expired expectation. So I'm asking you today, what picture are you holding that God is trying to erase? What thought are you worshiping that's standing in the way of his revelation?
Yep.
Because you can't hear heaven clearly when your mind is full of noise. And sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one in your own head. That's why the Bible doesn't just say, let the wicked forsake their ways. It says, let the unrighteous forsake their thoughts. It's not just about what you do, it's about how you think. Because behavior follows belief. Actions follow thoughts. And if your mind is misaligned, your faith will be misdirected. We've got to get to the place where we stop idolizing our own opinions, where we stop worshiping our own expectations. Because some of us are bowing down to our thoughts more than we are to God. We've built shrines around our plans. We've built altars around our ambitions. And now we can't receive the very thing God is trying to give us because we're too in love with the image in our head. But I came to break that image tonight. I came to tell you that it's okay if it doesn't look like what you thought. It's okay if it feels unfamiliar. It's okay if it stretches you.
Yeah.
Because that's how you know it's him. That's how you know it's God. Because his answers will always challenge your mind before they change your life. So if you're in a season where nothing looks like what you expected, don't panic. Don't quit. Don't walk away from your manna just because it's unfamiliar. Instead, lean in. Let go of the picture. Release the plan. And open your heart to recognize the answer. Because this is the truth. God didn't make a mistake. He didn't forget your prayer. He didn't ignore your cry. He answered. But the answer came in a form you weren't ready for. And now, it's your move. Will you cling to your thoughts? Or will you surrender to his? Today, I want you to choose surrender. Choose trust. Choose obedience. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when it doesn't look like what you imagined. Because if you let go of your image, you'll receive his increase. If you let go of your thoughts, you'll walk into his truth. His thoughts are not your thoughts. And that's not a limitation, that's a blessing. because it means he sees more, knows more, and loves deeper than you ever could. So stop trying to fit God into your picture and let him show you the one he painted just for you. And remember this, you may not recognize it now, but if you stay faithful, if you stay open, one day you'll look back and say, that was God all along.
I already had that moment.
My dear friend, you know, there's a voice that keeps echoing in my spirit. 4 simple words that carry the weight of eternity. I will show you. I will show you. I will show you.
Go.
That's not the suggestion.
Grow.
That's not a maybe. That's
Grow.
not some vague religious phrase we throw around when we don't know what else to say. That's a promise.
Grow.
That's a guarantee. That's heaven speaking directly into your wilderness and declaring that revelation will meet you where reason runs out. Chosen one.
Welcome.
The problem with many of us is we want God to explain everything before we move. We want the full plan, the route, the timing, the resources, the map. But God doesn't operate by logic. He doesn't move according to our intellect. He's not following your 5-year plan. He's not bound by what you understand. He moves by revelation.
God.
And revelation doesn't require proof.
Fuck.
It requires trust.
Up.
When God told Abraham, go to a land I will show you,
Oh.
he didn't hand him a map. He didn't drop a GPS.
Get up,
pin.
big dog,
He
up.
said, move, pack up, leave what you know.
Oh.
Walk away from your comfort, your familiarity, your
Ow.
support system. Why? Because real revelation
One more.
doesn't follow reason. It doesn't make sense to the natural
God.
mind.
Up.
It demands faith to follow before there's anything visible to
Oh,
follow.
shit.
I will show you. Those words are
Oh,
thunder in the
wow.
spirit realm because they break the chains of control. They shatter the illusion that you're in charge. They strip away the safety nets you've built and challenge you to walk on water, to believe without seeing, to trust without touching. And I know that ain't easy. It never is, because your mind wants to understand, but your spirit wants to obey. Let me tell you something. If you're waiting for the instructions to make sense, you'll never move, because God's greatest moves don't begin with clarity, they begin with conviction. And you've got to learn to live by what he whispered in your spirit, not by what you can prove with your senses. I will show you. That means you won't see it now, you won't understand it now, you might even doubt it now, but keep walking, because revelation is waiting at the next step. Some of y'all are praying, God, show me and I'll go. But God is saying, go and I'll show you. You're waiting for the revelation to come before obedience. But obedience is the seed that unlocks revelation. When God gives you a promise like, I will show you, it means the blueprint is hidden inside the journey. You won't discover the full picture until your feet touch the path. You won't understand his ways until you step into the wilderness. That's why we walk by faith, not by sight. Faith is stepping out when your mind is screaming, this don't make sense, and your spirit is whispering, but God said it. Let me break this down. If you are walking through something right now that feels unfamiliar, unclear, even confusing, that might be your confirmation that God is guiding you, because he doesn't guide us with explanations. He guides us with
feel like I'm being
revelation.
guided.
And revelation is progressive. He doesn't show you the whole staircase. He says, take the first step. Trust me with what you can't yet see. And if you're like me, that'll stretch you. That'll break your pride. That'll challenge everything you thought you knew. Because we were trained to think before we move. But faith says move, and understanding will catch up later. That's why he keeps repeating it. I will show you. I will show you. I will show you. Because we forget. Because we question. Because we look around and say, God, where is the evidence? And he says the evidence is in the obedience. This is not cognitive, it's spiritual, it's supernatural. It's not going to come through study or strategy or spreadsheets. It's going to come through surrender. God's direction for your life will not always feel logical, but it will always be purposeful. You're not walking blind. You're walking led. And there is a difference. You ever wonder why God doesn't tell you everything up front? It's not because he's trying to frustrate you. It's because if he showed you the whole thing too soon, you'd either run from it or try to control it. So he gives you just enough light to take the next step. And when you get there, he says, I will show you. I've seen it in my own life. Times when nothing made sense. When the door didn't look right, but God said, walk through it. When the provision wasn't visible, but he said, go anyway. When the risk felt bigger than the reward, but he whispered, again, I will show you. And every time I obeyed in faith, revelation followed, not always instantly, but always faithfully. So if you're in a season right now where God is stretching you beyond logic, rejoice. That means you're in the territory of trust. That means heaven is trying to pull you out of your head and into your spirit. That means God is about to reveal something that can't be explained by facts, but will be undeniable in its fruit. Listen to me. Stop trying to make sense of a spiritual journey using natural tools. That's why you're frustrated. That's why you feel stuck. Because your mind is trying to figure out what only your spirit can receive. And revelation doesn't shout, it whispers. You won't always see it coming, but when it comes, you'll know. It'll hit your spirit like confirmation. It'll shake you, it'll settle you. I will show you that you were tonight. That's God's promise to you. Not I might show you, not if you're perfect, I'll show you. No, he said, I will. That's covenant language. That's eternal. That's immovable. And that means you can walk forward with holy confidence, knowing that even if you don't understand where you are, God does. And he's already in your next step, waiting to reveal the next layer. So take the step. Don't wait for proof. Don't demand clarity. Just trust. Trust that the God who called you is the same God who will show you. Trust that he's not playing games with your life.
Let me see
Trust
if
that every delay has a purpose. Every detour has a revelation. And every desert
Thank you
has
guys.
hidden manna.
Welcome.
He will show you. You're not lost.
This shit.
You're being led. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. You're not off course. You're on a faith walk. And the God who started this thing is faithful to complete it. He said, I will show you. So keep going. Don't quit. Don't turn around. Keep your heart open, your spirit alert, and your feet moving, because revelation is coming. And when it hits you, everything is going to make sense. Everything. Hold on. He's about to show you. Beloved chosen ones, have you ever felt like there are moments in life that seem meaningless, but something inside of you urges you forward, and you feel like you're very close? You can't explain it, you can't calculate it, you don't have the facts, but there's a stirring in your spirit, a sense, a knowing. It's like the atmosphere around you has shifted, but your situation hasn't caught up yet. You're not there, but you're in the region. And let me tell you something about the region. It's sacred ground. It's the place between not yet and almost. It's where your spirit leaps, even when your bank account says you're broke. It's where your soul starts singing while your circumstances still look like sorrow. That's when you know you're near something. That's when you know you're brushing up against destiny. See, the children of Israel hadn't entered the promised land yet, but they were in the region, and being in the region doesn't mean you've made it. It means you're close enough to feel the shift, close enough to sense the fragrance of what's coming, close enough that even hell knows you're near breakthrough.
I mean,
That's why the attacks intensify. That's why the warfare gets wilder.
that makes sense.
That's why confusion tries to set in, because you're in the region. The region is where the enemy gets nervous.
Oh, fucked it all up.
The closer you get to purpose, the harder the enemy fights. You thought the pressure meant you were off course. No, child of God, the pressure means you're almost there.
I get
The
it.
storm is a sign. The chaos is confirmation.
It doesn't
The
change the
resistance
fact
is evidence
of how uncomfortable and painful it all is still. You just gotta keep going.
It leaves you alone when you're not moving, but the moment you cross the invisible line into destiny's territory, all hell breaks loose. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. The enemy wants to shake you loose before the miracle manifests. He wants you to give up just before it gets good. But here's the revelation. When you're in the region, you don't need all the details. You just need discernment. This is not about logic. It's about sensing. You're not operating from intellect now. You're walking by the Spirit. That I can feel it coming faith. That I can't explain it, but I know it kind of confidence. That's what sustains you in the region. The region is a spiritual territory. It's a zone where your natural eyes can't see, but your spirit starts picking up signals. It's when you stop recognizing road signs, but your heart recognizes divine alignment. It's when everything around you looks unfamiliar, but your soul feels like home. It's when you don't have the map, but you trust the guide. And I want to speak to somebody tonight who's in the region. You've been questioning, you've been second guessing, you've been wondering why everything around you feels off. Let me tell you, you're not off, you're in transition. And transition always feels strange before it feels right. You're in the region of your next. You may not have the contract yet, but you're in the region. You may not be holding the promise yet, but you're standing on the soil. You may not be married yet,
Whoa.
but your spirit has already met what's coming. That sense you've been feeling, that tug, that pull, that anticipation, it's the Holy Spirit letting you know you're close. But don't be surprised if the warfare increases, because the region is also where the enemy sends distractions, where he sends confusion, where he tries to convince you that nothing is happening, when in fact, everything is happening. He knows what's around the corner. He senses the same shift you do. So he sends fear, he sends delay, he sends anxiety, but I came to tell you, don't let go in the region. You come too far to quit now. You fought through too much to turn around here. The enemy wouldn't be fighting this hard if you weren't standing on holy ground. If you weren't close to breakthrough, he wouldn't be breathing down your neck. But you're in the region. You're in the realm of promise. And your next step could be the one that brings the miracle into manifestation. There's a moment in every faith journey where you've got no more evidence to hold on to, just the word, just the whisper, just the sense that God is up to something, and that's all you need. That's what carried Ruth into Boaz's field. She didn't have direction. She just ended up in the right region. That's what carried Abraham to Moriah. He didn't know the exact mountain.
Big fucking
He was
legs
told,
up.
go to the region, and I will show you. See how it all ties together. First comes the call, then comes the region, then comes the revelation. But you've got to survive the region to receive the revelation.
Oof.
And that's where many give up. That's where many get weary, because they can't make sense of where they are. But I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to make sense to be sacred. You're in the region not by accident, but by assignment. Okay. God positioned you here. God shifted you here. God allowed everything that shook your life to shape you into place. You didn't end up here. You were led here. And because you were led here, you're protected here. You're covered here. So what do you do when you're in the region? You keep walking. You keep worshiping. You keep believing. You keep declaring, I'm closer than I've ever been, because the ground beneath your feet is pregnant with promise. Amen. The wind around you is heavy with breakthrough. The enemy knows it. Heaven knows it. And deep down, so do you. The worst thing you could do right now is quit. The most tragic thing you could do right now is retreat. Because this region is the bridge between your wilderness and your promised land. It may not be the destination, but it's proof that the destination is near. So today, if you hear my voice and something in your spirit is jumping, don't ignore it. That's the sign. That's the confirmation. That's your inner man saying, we're close. You might not see it yet, but God is working. You might not feel ready, but heaven is already positioned. Stay in the region. Survive the shaking. Don't be moved by the madness. Because what God is about to do in your life is already surrounding you. All you've got to do now is not walk away. You're in the region. Don't quit now. Beloved chosen ones. Now let's talk more clearly about what true worship really is. Worship is not about your voice, your tears, or your rhythm. It's about your recognition.
Yep.
Recognition of God's presence when your world doesn't make sense. Recognition of his voice when
Get
everything
it
else is
up.
silent.
Yep.
As I mentioned above, worship is the gymnasium of the Spirit. Why do I say that? Because it trains your ears to hear heaven in chaos. It conditions
there
your
we
heart
go.
when
Up.
pride rises, and it awakens your spiritual senses when your natural ones fail. Worship is the decision to focus on God even when you can't feel him. It's faith without form, it's love without logic, it's obedience without explanation. It's about seeing with your spirit what your eyes can't behold, trusting what your ears can't physically hear, and standing strong when every reason tells you to. When you enter into worship, you're not just singing, you're aligning. You're not just lifting hands, you're lifting your faith. And that kind of worship doesn't just stir the room, it moves heaven. Worship is spiritual sensitivity. It is spiritual clarity. It's the ability to perceive God's presence when nothing in the natural confirms it. It is tuning your soul like a radio receiver, learning to pick up the frequency of heaven while the rest of the world remains loud and static. You're not reacting to the rhythm of a beat. You're responding to the depth of a presence. True worship doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with surrender. The beauty of it all is that God doesn't wait for you to be flawless before he receives your praise. He doesn't require spotless hands, only an open heart. He meets you right in the middle of your brokenness, your confusion, your uncertainty. He inhabits the praises of his people, not because of how perfect they are, but because of how they pursue him in spite of everything. Every hallelujah that rises from a wounded heart that still believes carries a fragrance so sweet,
Hallelujah.
It passes through the clouds and reaches the throne room of God. That kind of worship pierces the heavens. And when you really grasp that truth, Your worship shifts. It moves from routine to hunger, from ritual to relationship. You no longer need a stage, a mic, or a crowd to lift your hands. You just need a memory of his goodness.
Thank
You
you.
just need a glimpse of what he's already done. In
Oh,
that place,
shit.
God's presence doesn't just surround you. This is why the Bible says they that worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Because God isn't seeking a show. He's seeking something real. He's not impressed by performance. He's not drawn to volume. He's after connection. He's moved by honesty. He doesn't want noise. He wants sincerity. That's why worship can't be limited to a Sunday service or confined to a church building.
Oh,
It must become a lifestyle. When you're stuck in traffic, exhausted and overwhelmed, but you whisper a quiet prayer, God calls that worship. When you've cried all night and still managed to say thank you, Lord, with a trembling voice, that's worship. When the people closest to you walk away, when you're left misunderstood, alone, forgotten, and yet you lift your eyes and say, you are still worthy, that is worship. That's when your soul is being strengthened. That's when your spirit is in training. Not just to survive, but to be sharpened. Worship in those moments isn't easy, but it's powerful. Because it's real, it's raw, it's honest. And in those quiet, broken hallelujahs, you begin to recognize God, not in the noise, but in the stillness, not in the crowd, but in the solitude. And here's the thing, the more you worship, the more you sharpen your spiritual senses. Your spirit becomes alert. You begin to hear things others can't. You begin to see what others overlook. You start sensing movement and direction that logic alone can't explain. Because you're no longer walking by sight, you're walking by revelation. That's exactly what happened to the disciples. When Jesus came walking on the water, they didn't recognize him by his appearance. They were afraid. They thought he was a ghost because the form didn't match what they expected. Jesus looked different. The setting was unfamiliar. And in that moment of fear and confusion, Peter did something powerful. With all his flaws, he still recognized the voice. He didn't ask for a miracle to prove it. He didn't ask to see more clearly. He simply said, if it's you, bid me come. That one request came from a place of sharpened hearing. Worship had trained Peter's ears to recognize truth, even when his eyes couldn't. And when Jesus spoke, Peter stepped out. He didn't walk on water. He walked on a word that pulled him above the storm, a word that carried him beyond the logic. That's what worship does. It tunes your soul to heaven's frequency. So many times we miss what God is doing simply because it doesn't come in the form we expected. It's only deeper depth and result revealed by so many. His confidence is a setup to deeper revelation. God is trying to draw us closer to train our ears to tell us things. It's a setup. Is a setup is a process, and your potential. Worship becomes the classroom where we learn that it's not the form that matters most, it's the voice. The voice that carries peace, the voice that breaks chains, the voice that stills every fear. And even when the method is unfamiliar, even when the way is unclear, the voice of God is always steady, always faithful, always true. Worship helps us recognize that voice above every other sound in our lives. Worship is not emotional escapism. It's not pretending everything is okay or trying to escape the reality of your struggle. It's divine alignment. It's stepping into agreement with God's truth, even when your world feels like it's falling apart. Worship doesn't ignore your pain. It invites God into it. It doesn't ask you to pretend like you're strong. It calls you to bring your weakness and lay it at his feet so he can be your strength. That's exactly why the enemy attacks your worship. He's not threatened by how many sermons you listen to if you never activate him through worship. He doesn't care how much scripture you memorize if you never surrender to it in spirit and in truth. But when you start worshiping for real, not out of habit but out of hunger, everything begins to shift. Chains break, doors open, lies lose their power. Worship sharpens your spirit, guiding you beyond emotion and into divine intuition. It teaches you to live in rhythm with heaven. And the more you develop your spiritual senses, the more you begin to recognize God's presence, even in the most unfamiliar places. He may not come in the way you expect. He may appear in the middle of a storm, speak through someone you didn't anticipate, or lead you through a season of silence. But because you've trained your heart through worship, your spirit knows how to respond. You begin to say like Peter, if it's you, I'll come. That kind of response doesn't require full understanding, it requires faith. That kind of obedience overrides fear. That kind of trust confuses the enemy because you're no longer waiting on visible signs or external validation. You're moving according to the quiet conviction in your spirit. Spiritual maturity isn't measured by how loud your worship is in a crowd, but by how steady your trust is in the dark. It's not about how high you leap in a sanctuary. It's about how deeply you believe when everything is silent. And that strength comes from worship, not just when the music is playing, but when your world feels like it's falling apart. When you choose to bow instead of breaking. When you choose to sing instead of staying silent. That's the kind of worship that matures you. That's the kind that trains your soul to recognize God in every season, no matter the form he takes. And this is critical, because in the days ahead, God will show up in ways you don't expect. He will work through people who don't fit your idea of who he would use. He will lead you into situations that look like chaos, but are actually sacred. And if your spiritual senses haven't been sharpened, you might miss him. You might walk right past what he's doing because it doesn't match what you imagine. But when your spirit has been trained through worship, you can say, this doesn't look like him, but I know that voice. Just like Mary, who didn't
Come on,
recognize
Trevor.
the risen Jesus until he called her name.
Yep.
Just like the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, who didn't know it was him until he broke the bread. True recognition doesn't always come through sight. It comes through intimacy. It comes through relationship. And that kind of recognition is only possible when you spend time with him in worship. So train your spirit. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the right song. Exercise your worship every day. Practice listening. Practice surrendering. Practice praising when no one else is around. Because God is preparing to move in ways that will defy human understanding. And he's not looking for those who need signs and wonders. He's looking for those who know his voice. Those who will go when he says, even if they don't know. Those who will step out when the storm hasn't settled. Those who will stay faithful when the crowd is gone. That's what it means to worship in spirit and in truth. It's not about appearance. It's about recognition. It's about trusting that God can show up looking different, sounding different, but still being the same. Worship is not about volume. It's not about music. It's not about being in a building. Worship is a posture. It's the position of your heart. It's where your will surrenders, where your fear bows, where your expectations are laid at the feet of a holy God. It's where you give up the illusion of control and step into the reality of trust. And when you live from that place, your whole life becomes an offering. You stop demanding explanations and start embracing encounters. You start seeing God not just in church, but in traffic, in tears, in silence. That's the true power of worship. It's not found in logic, it's found in love. It's not born from certainty, it's born from surrender. And when you truly worship, you don't just show up to church, you become the church. You don't just sing about heaven, you start walking in it. Not someday, but right now, right here. So I challenge you, praise beyond what you feel, trust beyond what you see, and believe beyond what you understand. Because even if the form changes, his voice never does. And if you know that voice, you already have all you need. Glory to God. Amen. Always. My dear friend, let me remind you of a powerful truth you can't afford to forget. When God provides, he doesn't always hand you the final polished product. No, he often gives you the raw material, the starting point, the seed. And what you choose to do with that seed, how you handle what looks small, unfamiliar, or incomplete, will determine what it grows into. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness. They were hungry, desperate, expecting God to show up in a specific way. And when he did, he gave them manna, not bread, not something fully formed, just manna. And when they saw it scattered on the ground, they asked, "What is this?" Because it didn't match the image they had in their minds. It didn't look like their idea of provision. And that's the exact place where so many of us miss the move of God. We expect him to give us something complete, something recognizable, something ready-made, but instead, he gives us potential. He gives us raw answers that require our faith, our effort, our obedience. We pray for breakthrough and receive responsibility. We ask for increase and receive instruction. The problem is never in what God sends. It's in how we see it. The manna wasn't lacking. It just didn't look like what they thought they needed. You see, the children of Israel had been in Egypt for over 400 years. And in Egypt, bread wasn't a mystery, it was a memory. They knew exactly what it looked like, how it smelled, how it tasted. Bread was predictable, bread was familiar. It was part of their history, part of their survival. So when God brought them into a new season and introduced something they had never seen before, they struggled. They couldn't identify it because it didn't match their expectations. And that's when they missed the meaning. I wonder how many of us are doing the exact same thing, walking past our blessings, ignoring our answered prayers because they don't come wrapped in the form we're used to. God said he would feed them, and he did. But he didn't drop loaves of warm, finished bread from the sky. He gave them manna, something raw, something unfamiliar, something full of potential, but requiring process. They had to go out and gather it. They had to grind it, crush it, boil it, bake it. They had to take what God gave and do something with it. God was saying, I'll provide, but you must participate. That's how faith works. That's how trust works. You can't just sit back and wait for a fully formed miracle when God has already delivered the answer in seed form. It may not look like the end result you imagined, but it holds the power to become exactly what you asked for. You've got to work it. You've got to recognize it. You've got to say with conviction, this might not look like my vision, but deep down I know it's the very thing I prayed for. And let me tell you something else. Some of us have been rejecting our miracle because we keep measuring it against someone else's finished product. You're staring at someone else's bread, admiring the way it's shaped, the way it smells, the way it rises, and all the while you're missing the fact that you've been given the exact same manna. The only difference is they worked it. They took what God gave them and they prepared it. They didn't wait for it to be handed to them wrapped in ribbon. They recognized that the raw thing they had was actually holy. It was heaven's provision in an unfamiliar form, and you've got it too. You've got the ingredients, but you're sitting back, arms folded, saying, why doesn't my life look like theirs? God doesn't give you what's finished, he gives you what's fertile. He doesn't hand you what you want, he gives you what you need to grow it. Moses understood that. That's why he told the people, take an omer of manna, preserve it, put it in the ark, as a testimony for future generations. He wasn't just thinking about today, he was thinking about tomorrow, because God knew how easy it is for us to forget. When the miracle becomes a memory, we get comfortable. We start thinking the blessing was always there. We forget the wilderness. We forget the gathering. We forget the grind. So God says, let them see what it looked like in the first place. Let them see what my provision looked like before it became the bread they ate. Because if they don't remember the process, they'll stop honoring the provider. That's the rhythm of divine collaboration. God gives, but you gather. God sends, but you steward. God rains it down from heaven, but you've got to raise it up through obedience, through effort, through faith, because provision without preparation will spoil, and promise without process will be forgotten. So stop looking for the bread and start recognizing the manna. It's already in your hands. You just have to move. Listen to me. Some of you are sitting on your manna right now, and you don't even know it. You're staring at it with frustration, confusion, maybe even a bit of bitterness, thinking, what is this? This isn't what I asked God for. But what you prayed for is actually hidden inside of what you're holding. You just haven't recognized it yet. It's not that God didn't answer you. It's that he answered in a form that requires your participation. Your faith isn't just about waiting, it's about working. It's about looking at what's in your hand and saying, this might not look like the answer, but it's the beginning of one. You prayed for a breakthrough and God gave you an opportunity to grow. You asked for a job and he gave you a gift. You cried out for companionship and he gave you time to heal and become whole. You wanted abundance and he planted a vision in your heart. Now the question is, what will you do with what you've got? Will you prepare it or walk past it? I'm reminded of what Jesus said in the Gospels. He told the Pharisees, your fathers ate manna in the wilderness and they died. But I am the true bread from heaven. And when he showed up, what did they say? What is this? They didn't recognize him. The Messiah was standing in front of them. And they missed it because the form didn't match their expectation. So what's the lesson here? If you don't train your spiritual eyes to look past what's obvious, you'll miss what God is doing right in front of you. You'll misinterpret a blessing as a burden. You'll see an open door but ignore it because it doesn't look grand enough. Divine opportunities often come wrapped in inconvenience, in unfamiliar forms, in moments that don't match our expectations. And if your praise is only reserved for polished miracles, you'll miss the raw materials God already placed in your hands. Sometimes the miracle isn't delivered, it's discovered. God gives you the invitation to participate in his plan, and it's up to you to say yes, to see it, to seize it, and to work it. Let me take you deeper into this. The manna had to be gathered every single morning. They couldn't hoard it, couldn't save it overnight, because if they did, it would spoil, it would rot by the next day. Why? Because God wasn't just feeding them, he was training them. Training them to come to him daily, to rely on him, not in bulk, but in faith. That's why the prayer says, give us this day our daily bread, not our monthly provision, not our yearly security, daily bread, daily dependence, daily trust. And he's teaching you the same thing. But don't miss this. On the sixth day, God told him to gather twice as much. Why? Because on the seventh day, there would be none. not as a punishment, but as a rhythm. God was teaching not just how to gather, but how to rest, how to walk in rhythm with him, to understand that divine instruction always brings enough for tomorrow, enough for tomorrow. When you move with God's voice, you never run out. Obedience ensures both provision and preservation. It teaches you that trusting him today sets you up for peace tomorrow. That's the rhythm of grace. That's the wisdom of the wilderness. Some of you are wondering why it feels like heaven's silent, like nothing's falling into place, like the flow has stopped. But maybe the reason you haven't received something new is because you didn't honor what he gave you yesterday. Maybe you prayed for more, but you never prepared what was already provided. God doesn't waste his miracles. He doesn't send manna to a people who won't move. If you're sitting still in doubt or delay, expecting abundance without action, why would he pour out more? It's time to shift your vision, open your spiritual eyes, and change your declaration. Stop calling it confusion, start calling it provision. Say, this is it. This job you're complaining about, it's your manna. That opportunity you keep overlooking, it's your manna. This season that feels uncomfortable, yes, that's your manna too. It might not look like much, but if God sent it, it's more than enough. And let's be honest, the enemy's goal is to keep you blind to what God has already placed in front of you. He wants you frustrated. He wants you dismissive. He wants you to look at your manna with contempt, with doubt. He whispers, that's not what you asked for. That's not enough. Because he knows that the moment you stop complaining and start creating, you shift. You step into alignment. You begin to take the raw potential God gave you and shape it in divine purpose. That's when the enemy gets nervous. Not when you pray for provision, but when you recognize it and start working it. So today I challenge you, take that manna and work it. Gather it with faith, knead it with obedience, bake it with expectation, praise over it, even when you don't understand it. Pray over it, even when it looks unfinished. Speak life over it, even when it feels incomplete. Stop calling it confusion and start calling it development. It's not a mistake, it's not a mess, it's bread in process. It's the miracle you've been waiting for, just in a form you didn't expect. God's answers won't always match your requests. But if you stay faithful, if you walk by faith, not by sight, you'll begin to see purpose in the process. You'll look back and realize that what you almost overlooked was the very thing that led you into your next season. So don't despise the manna. Embrace it. Prepare it. Thank God for it, not just for what it is, but for what it's becoming. Because the manna was never the destination, it was the invitation. The beginning of something greater. Imagine this with me. Peter, standing in the boat, wind howling, waves crashing, heart racing. Jesus is out there walking on the water, and Peter sees him. But what if Peter had waited for Jesus to come pick him up? What if he had stayed in that boat, frozen by logic, paralyzed by fear, needing God to carry him instead of calling him? He would have missed the miracle. Because sometimes God doesn't carry you, he calls you. And that calling requires movement. It demands a step. The power of the miracle isn't in the boat, it's in the stretch. It's in stepping beyond your comfort zone, your understanding, your fear. Now I know some of you are standing right at that edge. You can see the promise. You can feel that internal tug. You can hear God's voice calling you out. But you're still waiting for the miracle to come to you, to walk into your space, to knock on your door. I need to tell you the truth. It's not coming that way. God has already done his part. He's already released the manna. The question now is, will you recognize it? Will you prepare it? Will you reach for it? And here's the test of faith. Can you reach even when it doesn't look like what you prayed for? Can you stretch when all God gave you was ingredients, not a finished meal? Because manna isn't the end. It's the invitation. Faith reaches. Faith stretches. Faith doesn't wait for everything to look perfect or feel easy. It acts based on trust in the one who gave the instruction. Faith says, this might not be what I expected. This might not come in the form I imagined, but I know who sent it, so I'll take it anyway. That's the core of real faith. It's not always loud. It's not always seen on a stage, but it's always moving. It moves in silence. It moves in tears. It moves even when it doesn't make sense. It keeps walking when the crowd turns back. It sees potential where others see problems. It says yes when logic says wait. And let me be clear, this isn't about striving, hustling, or pushing in your own strength. It's about responding to God with obedience. Sometimes you don't need another prophecy, another promise, another word. You need to act on what you've already been given.
Thank you for tuning in tonight. Have a blessed rest of your evening. Don't listen to the haters, my man. They're secretly your biggest fans. Trust the process. Stay clear. Naysayers are everywhere.
The opportunity is
Persevere.
already in front of you, but it's your reach that activates it. So don't downplay what's in front of you. That small beginning, that overlooked path, that quiet nudge, that might just be the doorway to your destiny.
God bless, chat. Have a great evening.
Stretch, move. This is your season, and I know it's scary. Reaching means risking. Stretching means stepping into the unknown. But what's more dangerous, staying stuck